So I don't know why, but nephrons are kind of my favorite thing to teach ever. So let's go over the nephron. So first of all, the nephron, there are millions of them in your kidneys. And they are the functioning part of our kidneys. So they're the ones that are really going to filter all those toxins and those wastes from our blood and create urine. So again, like I said, you have millions of these in each of your kidneys, and they are located in two places, or they span two sections of your kidney, I should say. So they start in the cortex of the kidney, which is that outer part of the kidney, and they dip into the medulla of the kidney. So those are the kind of the places where the nephrons are found. You can see that I color coded my nephron. I'm going to have you do the same and label it before we get into what these parts of the nephron actually do. So this section here is called the afferent arteriole. And this is literally going to just be where blood is going to come in to the nephron. So it's going to be the entryway for blood. And that blood is going to come into this, what looks like a bunch of worms, but it's really a bunch of capillaries. It's a capillary network. And this is called the glomerulus. So the afferent arteriole is where the blood is going to come into the glomerulus, and I colored that red. The glomerulus is surrounded by Bowman's capsule. So that's what this blue thing is. And again, I'll go over what all of these structures do. But this is the Bowman's capsule. Once the blood, and I'll tell you, filtration happens here. So once the blood has been filtered, the blood is going to go back out of the glomerulus into the afferent arteriole. Afferent comes into the glomerulus. Efferent is how the blood leaves. Here are just a bunch of blood vessels, okay? Blood vessels. And all that blood is going to be collected in the renal vein and then leave the kidneys. And remember that when the blood comes in, it's toxic, it has waste. When it leaves, it's been purified, it's been filtered, but it does have less oxygen because the kidney used some of that oxygen. This part here that I colored in pink is called the proximal convoluted tube. Okay, the proximal convoluted tube. This thing here in green, which dips into the medulla, is the loop of Henle. We go back up and we have this in purple, which is the distal convoluted tube. And then lastly, here in yellow is the collecting duct. So this is the structure of the nephron, and I'm going to have you first start labeling these structures and color coding the different structures, and then we'll go over what actually happens in the nephron. Okay, so this is what happens, guys. Blood, dirty blood that has a ton of toxins and waste is going to come in through the afferent arteriole into the nephron. And it's going to make its way into the glomerulus, which is housed in the Bowman's capsule. This part of the nephron, that is where ultrafiltration happens. So the blood that's coming in is going to have proteins, amino acids, sodium, potassium, calcium, urea, glucose, toxins, carbon dioxide, all kinds of things. And we don't want all those things. So we're going to literally filter it. We're going to get rid of the toxins. We're going to get rid of the glucose. We're going to get rid of the amino acids. We're going to get rid of the ions. And we're going to kind of like separate them into two things: the toxins and the bad stuff, and the good blood. So that's literally what happens here. Now, the good stuff is going to go to the efferent arteriole. So this is the good blood. And it's going to go through all of this capillary network, and make its way out through the renal vein, where it will go back into the body towards the heart to be repumped. So that's where the good stuff is going to go. The bad stuff, the toxins, the urea, water, things like that, are going to enter into the Bowman's capsule. So they're going to enter this blue section of the Bowman's capsule, and they're going to make their way into the proximal tube. So again, blood is going to come in, and it's going to come in all dirty and gross. In the glomerulus, that's where ultrafiltration is going to happen, and we're going to separate the good stuff and the bad stuff. The good stuff, the good blood, and the stuff that we want is going to go through the efferent arteriole, through the capillary network, the little thin dark ones, out of the renal vein into the body. And the bad stuff, the toxins, the waste, is going to go into the Bowman's capsule and then into the proximal tube. So our body got a little excited when it did ultrafiltration, and it sent all of the waste and the toxins into the proximal convoluted tube. Now our body's like, wait, we actually need some of that. Hold up, let's bring it back. So in the proximal tube, that's where reabsorption happens. So some of the stuff that left the blood into the proximal tube are reabsorbed back in the body. So you could see that the capillary is kind of intertwined and connected with the proximal tube. So we can literally send things from the tube into the capillary so that they could go through the renal vein. That's why all these capillaries are connected. And you could see that at multiple points, we can change our mind and be like, oh no, just kidding, send it to the blood. And we can send some of the stuff that we filtered back. So in the proximal convoluted tube, we're going to reabsorb all of the glucose. We accidentally sent glucose and the sugar, but hey, we need sugar for ATP. So we're gonna send that back into the blood. We actually took out some water, and that's bad. We're gonna need some of that water back. So the water is gonna be able to enter the bloodstream. And hey, we also sent some sodium and some chlorine ions back. We're gonna need those. So that's literally what happens in the proximal tube. Some of the ions, water, and the glucose that we had originally got rid of, we want back in the blood, and the proximal convoluted tube is only one layer of cells, so reabsorption can happen relatively easily. So now that we have reabsorbed, we now enter into the loop of Henle. And you can see that when you enter the loop of Henle, we are now in the medulla part of the kidney. And man, this is salty. And you can see I drew all this salt there. This is salty. And remember that we have some water in here. In this substance, we have some water. So as that substance, those toxics, those wastes continue, this water, doing what water does through osmosis, is going to be like, whoa, this is salty. We don't like it when things are salty. We're going to need to regulate. So literally a ton of water is going to leave the substrate. And that's good because it goes back into our bodies. So the filtrate that we're making is going to hit the salty part and be like, oh no, too much salt. We need to regulate. Let's dilute this and not make it as salty because we don't like salty. So it'll lose water, and that water will go back to our bodies and help us stay hydrated. That's what's happening on the way down. Then on the way up, salt is pumped out. So we have some salts in here, and we're like, nah, we need to get rid of this salt before we come back up. And as we're getting rid of the salt, that's what keeps this medulla super, super salty. So on the way down, the filtrate realizes that it is in a hypertonic solution, and through osmosis, it'll start getting rid of water, which is good because it helps keep our bodies hydrated, and it allows that water to stay in the body instead of being peed out. Then on its way up, it gets rid of salt ions, keeping this part of the kidney super, super salty. Now, interestingly enough, this length of the Henle tube is positively correlated with the need of water conservation in animals. So if I am an animal that lives in a desert and I need to conserve as much water as I possibly can, I'm going to have a mega long loop, because the longer the loop, water, 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 right? So the longer the loop, the more water will leave the filtrate and stay in the body. However, if I had a super short tube like this, it would be like water, water on its way up. And I wouldn't keep a lot of water in the body, and a lot of water will be kept in the filtrate and peed out. So everything that we keep is going to eventually turn into urine. So again, animals that need to conserve a lot of water are going to have really long loops, because that gives you a lot of time to get rid of that water and keep it in the body. However, again, short loop, it's like water, water, everything else stays and will be peed out. So the last part is, or the second to the last part, is the distal convoluted tube, which is here in purple. And this is literally just fine tuning. So the solute concentration is fine tuned, and more water will leave depending on this hormone, ADH, antidiuretic hormone. And it all depends on how hydrated you are. So if you are super dehydrated, your brain is going to create this hormone ADH. And when ADH is present, you will lose more water out of the filtrate to keep in your body. Remember, everything we lose is being kept in the body. So your brain will literally will make this hormone ADH. And when ADH is present, your body's like, yo, we're dehydrated. We cannot afford to lose water. And the distal tube is like, all right, I got you. Let me get rid of more water and put it back into the blood. Now, if you are drinking a lot of water and you're nicely hydrated, your body's like, that's cool. We can afford to lose some water. And as a result, you're going to pee a lot, and your pee is going to be nice and clear. And literally, you could tell how hydrated you are based off of the color of your urine. So when your urine is really dark yellow, you're dehydrated because there is not a lot of water. And there is not a lot of water because the body made the hormone ADH telling it that it's dehydrated, and that water is going to leave back into the blood to stay in the body. However, when you're drinking a lot of water and you're treating your body nicely, your body's like, yeah, it's cool. We can pee out the water. We have tons of it. So then your pee will literally be more clear, and you'll have a lot more pee, and you'll be peeing more often. After the distal convoluted tube, you have created urine, and it will go through this collecting duct. And you could see that there are openings here. That's because there is the same collecting duct for many, many nephrons. So like another nephron will connect here and send its urine. Another nephron will collect here and send its urine. This collecting duct is going to connect to your urethra and to your bladder, where you will then pee it out. The rest of the blood and everything else that got reabsorbed is going to go out of the renal vein back into the body towards the heart.